At the time of its debut, the Toyota Avalon was the largest front-wheel drive sedan offered by the Toyota division in the North American market. Being marketed against full-size domestic offerings, the Avalon was a welcome addition to the Toyota lineup and proved successful in the North American market. In this episode, we're going to take a closer look at the first generation Toyota Avalon and how Toyota had high hopes and aspirations to siphon some traditional American large sedan buyers over to the Toyota division. So grab a juice box, kick back, and let's get down to the nitty-gritty. During this period of time, the Toyota Cressida was on sale in North America as well as other markets. Overall, the Cressida was a solid car, being praised for its ride, handling, and of course, reliability. Being powered by a 3-liter inline-6, which cranked out 190 horsepower, much of its mechanical components were modified versions of those found in the Supra, such as the double wishbone rear suspension. Although wearing a non-luxury badge, the Cressida was marketed as a higher-end premium model, being positioned above the Camry and Toyota sedan lineup. As early as 1988, the design for the third-generation Camry was frozen. It was determined the upcoming redesign of the Camry, along with the introduction of an XLE V6 model, would assist in covering a portion of the Cressida's market, although the Camry was more economically focused, not to mention front-wheel drive, while the Cressida, on the other hand, was more of an upmarket sedan with rear-wheel drive. Along with the third-generation Camry's design being submitted and approved in 1988, there were also talks of a future flagship model being positioned above the Camry as an eventual replacement for the Cressida, and the new flagship model would perhaps adopt a modified version of the Camry platform and compete with the typical full-size American sedan offerings. The Cressida would carry on for the time being, but ultimately, it would be planned to be phased out sometime in the early 90s. 1990. Development on the new sedan began this year, utilizing 299 Tango as its project code. Kusama Toshiharu, the project's design chief, was involved in the creation of the new sedan. The new sedan under development would serve as the replacement for the aging Cressida. However, it would be different in several ways. For example, whereas the Cressida was a rear drive setup, this new sedan would be front drive. The Cressida was motivated by an inline-6 engine. However, this new car would be V6 powered. And while Toyota marketed the Cressida as a mid-size sedan, this new car under development will be marketed as a full-size sedan with available 6-passenger seating, mimicking the typical contemporary large American sedan. With the project underway and in full swing, it was determined that the new car under development would indeed ride on a modified Camry chassis with a stretched wheelbase. 1991. The design phase for the new car wrapped up in the middle of this year, with the final design being submitted and approved. The design patents were filed with the Japanese Patent Office soon thereafter. It was also during this year, late 1991, when Toyota unveiled the new third-generation Camry for the 1992 model year. This new full-size sedan that Toyota was currently developing would eventually be built at the same plant as the Camry, the Toyota Motor Manufacturing Facility in Georgetown, Kentucky. Dave Illingworth, Toyota Division Group Vice President, mentioned, "It will be the roomiest, most sophisticated, best-equipped sedan ever offered by the Toyota division." He went on to say, "Positioned above the Camry, it will be the flagship of Toyota's sedan lineup and a key element of our commitment to the U.S. market." Illingworth added, "Designed, engineered, and developed largely by Americans and built by Americans, this new full-size sedan will contain more American thinking creativity than any previous Toyota product." Also during this year, 1991, Toyota unveiled a concept convertible at the Tokyo Auto Show. This concept is what introduced the name Avalon. Although this concept had absolutely nothing to do with the flagship sedan that was heading for production, the flagship sedan would ultimately adopt the Avalon name from this concept convertible. As we mentioned earlier, the new sedan would be based on an extended Camry platform. The Despite this, however, the new sedan will instead use different suspension components and a revised steering ratio. Overall, the new sedan's wheelbase will be 4 inches longer than the Camry. The designers and developers had a vision, and their vision for the final product was a well-balanced combination of full-size car ride comfort combined with the nimble handling and responsive steering of a mid-size car, while staying true to the solid reliability that Toyota customers had become accustomed to. Since the start of its development, the Avalon was meant to be the most American of all Toyotas. This is why the vast majority of the exterior and interior component design responsibilities were handed over to the Toyota Technical Center in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Torrance, California, and Whitman, Arizona. The design team crafted the Avalon's restrained exterior design to reflect its flagship sedan status within the Toyota lineup, and the new Avalon would be built with a high level of quality with pronounced lines and a refined, streamlined appearance. 1994. It was February of this year at the Chicago International Auto Show where the new Toyota Avalon made its official public display. Although it did not go the typical route as most Japanese branded sedans, the Avalon got positive reviews from the press and was well received by the public. The Avalon was later officially launched in late 1994 as a 1995 model year car. Overall, the full-size sedan had much in common with the mid-size Camry, which was a great thing. Not only did it ride on a stretched platform derived from the Camry, but it was adorned with a more powerful 192 horsepower version of the Camry's excellent 1MZ FE 3-liter all-aluminum V6. The smooth 4-speed automatic transmission was also pulled from the Camry parts bin to be used for Avalon duty. Despite the shared mechanical bits, the Avalon was essentially an all-new car, and although it did not share any body panels with the Camry, it retained the familiar Toyota family resemblance at the time. For instance, the new Avalon was recognizably Toyota, but it did possess some strong styling cues of its upscale Lexus cousins. The front end of the car had a hint of the LS400, while many suggest the side profile had a hint of the Giugiaro designed GS300. You be the judge. When the Avalon went on sale, it was the biggest sedan ever to wear the Toyota emblem in the United States, and larger front drive domestic cars like the Buick LeSabre, not to mention the Pontiac Bonneville, are just a few examples the Avalon was intended to go against. Although Toyota marketed the Avalon as a full-size sedan and had its sights set on the full-size domestic offerings, the Avalon was actually more closely in size with the mid-size second-generation Ford Taurus. But despite being similar in size as far as the exterior dimensions, the Avalon on the inside offered more interior space than the Taurus, particularly in the back seat. In the back, legroom dimensions were more close to that of the big Dodge Intrepid. To put the Avalon's size into better perspective, let's look at the contemporary Mazda 929 and Dodge Intrepid. The Avalon was 3 inches shorter than the 929 and a whopping 11 inches shorter than the Intrepid. The exterior dimensions of the Avalon were nearly identical to that of the Mitsubishi Diamante, Mazda Millennia, and the Nissan Maxima, its perennial competitors. Nevertheless, due to its interior volume, the EPA placed the Avalon in the large sedan class. When the Avalon first launched, customer reaction was very favorable. Car shoppers had really liked the idea of the Avalon being offered with a front bench seat. Salesmen reported that half of the Avalons they sold were equipped with Toyota's all-new power split bench seat, enabling 6-passenger capacity. So the bench seat and column shifter combo proved to be a popular choice amongst mature consumers. Avalon spec'd out with front bucket seats came with the floor-mounted shifter. The Avalon came in 2 trim levels, the XL and the upscale XLS. Although the XL was touted as the base model, there was nothing really base about it since it was still nicely equipped. Both XL and XLS shared some of the standard safety features, including dual airbags and side impact safety protection. Anti-lock brakes were optional on the XL and standard on the XLS. Prices range from $23,000 to $30,000 depending on how the car was spec'd out. All Avalons came equipped with air conditioning, power windows, and power mirrors. By the time the 1997 model year came around, ABS became standard, with the power output reaching 200 horsepower. There was also more torque, which had increased to 214 pound-feet, up from 210 pound-feet from the previous model year. In 1997, for the 1998 model year, a mid-cycle refreshed Avalon went on sale, sporting minor revisions to the front and rear of the car. Although the Avalon was primarily intended for the American market, it was also sold in the Japanese domestic market, being exclusive to Toyota store locations. First-generation Toyota Avalons were built in America and exported to Japan as a right-hand drive model. Overseas in Japan, it was the largest front-wheel drive sedan sold at Toyota store locations, and it was sold in showrooms next to the somewhat similar full-size rear-wheel drive Toyota Celsior, which is otherwise known in the American market as the Lexus LS400. The American exported Avalon was classified a luxury car by Japanese regulations. By Japanese standards, the 3-liter mill in the Avalon was considered a large engine displacement. Japanese government dimension regulations placed the exported Avalon in the large car category. Because of this, owners of the vehicle had to pay a relatively expensive annual road tax that comes with cars exceeding the dimensions and engine size limits established by the Japanese government. For the American market, the first-generation Toyota Avalon remained in production until August 1999, when it was discontinued to make way for the second-generation model that would enter production in September 1999 and go on sale shortly thereafter for the 2000 model year. The second generation grew larger while still riding on a stretched Camry platform. It continued use of the 1MZ FE engine, and assembly of the car remained at the Georgetown facility. Although 1999 marked the final model year for the first-generation Toyota Avalon in the United States, the first-generation Avalon wasn't done just yet. The first-generation Avalon would live on in a different market. In the United States, Toyota began to recycle the old tooling for the first-generation Avalon in 1999 in order to make way for the all-new redesigned 2000 model. Rather than completely getting rid of the old tooling, Toyota of America instead shipped the old tooling to Toyota of Australia. In summer of 2000, Australia now had the Avalon, which was touted as an all-new model. So in other words, although the first-generation Avalon went out of production in the United States in 1999, Australia had just gotten the model for the 2000 model year and kept it until 2005. The all-new Australian Avalon sported identical sheet metal to the old 95 to 99 US Avalon. The Australian model was built in Melbourne, suburb of Altona, made in both right-hand drive for Australia and left-hand drive for the Middle East. While the first-generation Avalon in the United States was well received and proved popular during its 95 to 99 model year run, that simply wasn't the case in Australia. In terms of sales, the Avalon performed poorly in Australia, with consumers deeming the car as boring. Just like in the US market, the Australian Avalon was front-wheel drive, offered only in 4-door format, and only came with a 3-liter V6 mated to an automatic transmission. Looking at the Australian market Avalon's intended competitors, the Ford Falcon and the Holland Commodore, we can see why customers deem the Avalon as a boring car. Sure, the Falcon and the Commodore offered their watered-down variants, but they were also available in sportier, high-performance variants equipped with V8 engines. Not to mention, they were not only limited to sedan format, but came in other body styles as well. These cars were also rear-wheel drive and offered buyers a choice in transmission options. As soon as 2001, The Avalon had got an update, becoming known as the Mark II. The update was minor and brought new alloy wheels to the sedan. A more heavier update, being known as the Mark III, applied to the 2003 to 2005 sedans. Despite the updates and revisions, most Australian buyers still chose the V6 equipped Camry over the Avalon. The refreshed Mark III model was unable to reverse declining sales, and many prospective buyers were put off by the way it looked up front. At the 2003 Melbourne and Sydney International Motor Shows, Toyota of Australia rolled out the X-Runner concept, a coupe utility version of the Avalon. This would have made it more similar to the variants offered by the Falcon and the Commodore. Equipped with a modified suspension and all-wheel drive, the X-Runner concept was intended for production. However, Toyota of Australia's request for production was denied by the parent company. Since the coupe utility version wasn't going to happen, and with a general lack of interest amongst consumers, Toyota of Australia instead marketed the Avalon towards taxi fleets, going up against the watered-down version of the Ford Falcon. Production of the Australian Avalon came to a close sometime in 2005. The following year, late 2006, Toyota rolled out its replacement, the Toyota Avalon. The Avalon might have had a rough ride in Australia, but nevertheless, it performed well in America, the market in which it was intended for. These are solid and well put together cars. I still see quite a few of them on the road these days. Many can be found online, some being high mileage examples that still run great, which is no surprise given its solid reliability. I personally like the look of this generation with its understated yet elegant appearance, but of course looks are subjective. Let us know if you ever owned or otherwise had the opportunity to drive one of these first generation Avalons. As always, thanks for coming out to the show, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Until next time, this is your host Rob, and thanks for tuning in to Antique Tags.